Welcome everybody to the DC New 52 review. I want to thank you for tuning into this episode. I am your host, Pauly DC, and let's get into another one of these things. Today I will discuss Batman Vol.2. It was titled The City of Owls, and it was written by Scott Snyder and James Tynion IV, with art by Greg Capullo, Jonathan Glapion, Rafael Albuquerque, and Jason Fabok, with issues 8 to 12 being released between June and October of 2012, plus Batman Annual Number 1 was included here, being released in July of that same year. Within these pages, things continue with the Court of the Owls, and along with tie-ins across the entire Bat family, they must face an army of Talons ready to take over Gotham City. Issue number 8 gets right into it with the inception of the Night of the Owls beginning at 7:01 p.m. as seen with timestamps throughout this entire event. Bruce is still physically and mentally recovering from his time in the Court of Owls labyrinth, while Alfred is quick to point out that his eyes are inflamed and hemorrhaging. Just another hurdle to overcome as the two suddenly hear someone trying to break into Wayne Manor, so they get ready for, you guessed it, lots and lots of Talons. The first one takes a wooden banister upside the head, followed by finding out his fighting style is antiquated, but William Cobb was over 100 years old and he kicked Batman's ass a bit. It's not the technique, it's the fighter's skill. Bruce is then faced with another trio of Talons that chase him to the roof, where it's seen that these ones are much more talkative, but are not able to get their target here due to Bruce slinking through the chimney and heading to the Batcave, which is where Alfred is already, along with another Talon who ends up getting crushed by the giant Penny, a cave staple at this point that's had a couple iterations. And yes, Pennyworth just used the penny as a weapon. That's rather copperonic, eh? Sorry. Bruce and Alfred then question the Talon and snatch a microdrive chip from him and have to then lock themselves in the armory before more get to them. Alfred is then instructed to chill the cave due to the Talons being susceptible to extreme cold, and while the ones in the cave claw their way further in, Batman comes out dressed in intimidating Power Ranger-like mecha armor. Pennyworth goes on to crack the Talon's hard drive while Batman faces off with the others, and it's a hit list full of every prominent person of power in Gotham. Even Victor Freeze is on it. The Talons are seen already putting down a half dozen of their targets, from judges to city councilors. So this has forced Alfred to put out a emergency backup call to all of the Bat allies just after 7:30, passing on a message of what the Court of Owls is and that there is more Talons out there than you can count.
God save us all.
Indeed, Alfred. Also, Tim Drake being drawn in this spread made no sense considering he didn't make this event. Issue number 9 opens on Bruce giving us a bit of history, saying that the first Waynes to live in the manor were brothers Joshua and Solomon in 1855, but had immediate bat problems, which helps explain why one appeared during our main character's transition into vigilantehood, I suppose. And then, in a zoological fact, it is said that the early Wayne brothers used owls to flush out the bats, which neatly brings us along to a history repeats itself moment at 7:51 p.m. as Armor Batman takes on a slew of Talons in the rapidly chilling Batcave. Also, now that all of these Talons thoroughly know that Batman is Bruce Wayne, it's too bad none of them have a communication device or something so they can tell their Court of Owls superiors this information. Not a big bargaining chip or anything. Anyhow, Batman's suit shows its warfare capabilities in many ways, but the Talons are still too strong, bashing him around the cave, so an assist from Fido the Dino is needed. Another icon of the Batcave, and no, the big Joker card doesn't do anything here. Even with this help, Batman still nearly gets an eye gouged out, so he locks Alfred in the armory as he readies himself for a final stand, but because of the recent cooldown, hundreds of bats then protrude from the deepest, darkest parts of the cave to attack the Talons, just like they did nearly 160 years ago to thwart the Owls. And when they returned back then, they were pissed. Leave it to Snyder to use a real-life piece of info like that for this climax. Excellent stuff. Batman is now feeling good among all of his winged friends and promptly runs over the last fleeing Talon with one of his many vehicles in order to catch up with some of the Bat allies, find out the Bat signal is now a Court of Owls logo, and learns that he can still save Jeremiah Arkham and Lincoln March. So he decides to hit Arkham Asylum first, which brings me along to this. I'd advise you pause this video here and jump over to my Night of the Owls crossover tie-in review and then return. Bookmark the 8:36 timestamp and see you again soon. The last couple pages, taking place just after 11 o'clock p.m., consist of Batman trying to help Lincoln, but when arrived at his office, Mr. March is already half dead thanks to a Talon dagger. However, he was able to get a final shot at his killer, and more of this scene was expanded on in Batman the Dark Knight Volume 1, Issue number 9. I told you to watch my Night of the Owls vid. In the end though, Lincoln tells Batman to tell Bruce Wayne that he must stay stalwart for Gotham and gives him a list of possible Court of Owls masters. Issue number 10 kicks off with Batman ready to deliver his counterpunch to the Court of the Owls, beginning with visiting the very wealthy penthouse of the Powers couple, only to find out that wife Maria is alone, so he scares the shit out of her, which prompts a warning call to other top court members that Alfred tracks to a rather familiar location to Bruce, Harbor House. He races over there and when arrived gives a little nod to his detective trainer Henri Ducard from Batman and Robin Volume 1, except when inside the secret meeting room many of the court's members have appeared to go full on Jonestown with poisoned drink. Yikes. The next morning, Bruce is holding the bullets that killed his parents due to keeping them for some reason. I'm just gonna shift that earlier yikes to right here. But anyway, he cannot believe that is how things have ended, except this is just the start of the big finale. Bruce glares on at a picture of his parents together when in their late-ish 20s, and this sends him to a morgue where in one of the cadaver freezing units a note is found instead of, well, let's find out. Batman goes to the abandoned and quite haunted-looking Willowwood child home that shut down due to being on a sinkhole, just like in Lincoln's story from Volume 1. Could it be? Batman is next surprised by a net trap out of nowhere, and then out from the shadows emerges the man behind the plight that helped bring in the Night of the Owls. Yup, Mr. March planned it all. Every time he spoke to Bruce, he was leading him to clues regarding the court while robbing them secretly at the same time, stealing their regenerative serum and murdering the ones at Harbor House. This guy is as smart as our titular hero in an effed up kind of way, it seems. Well, he should be, because apparently he's Thomas friggin' Wayne Jr., and that is how he knew Bruce was Batman. He's his little brother. Batman ain't buying any of this, but he does mention that he put all the clues together when seeing that Martha was wearing a heart pin in the picture like the one Lincoln or Thomas described again in Volume 1. He also was supposedly in a car accident, but while still in the womb and had to be born premature because of this, so he got put in Willowwood only for it to become a hellscape of abuse after the Waynes, the top benefactors of the place, were killed, and he was then forgotten. Meaning now in his modern Talon gear, it is time for good old revenge. Issue number 11 brings an end to the Court of the Owls saga, beginning with a classic finger quote brother versus brother battle. Lincoln even makes the Romulus and Remus, Eteocles and Polynices references. And what about Abel and Cain? Anyhow, Batman tries to keep fighting the new Owlman here, but things briskly turn into Mr. March, giving us at least his interpretation of his origin while flying around the city with Big Brother Bruce hanging beneath him. Batman is smashed through a large building while Lincoln again mentions the car crash he was in and his subsequent time in the Willowwood home where after Thomas and Martha Wayne would visit until their death, he waited in sorrow thinking Brother Bruce would come and save him. But since he didn't, Batman is next turned into the clapper for a large bell that is passed by. Now again, I know this is the Dark Knight, but he's already thoroughly stunned here, and when Owlman tries to dump him in the turbine jet of a commercial airplane, he's somehow able to hang on. Built different or not, I'm sorry, there's just no way. Moving on though, Batman was able to sneak a small explosive onto Lincoln, which then goes off just in time for him to pull a narrow escape. However, he's got no gear or gadget to save him from the free fall. Or does he? As a view of Gotham he doesn't get to witness very often is taken in, Batman looks down at one of his under construction skyscrapers and goes on to use not just any rope, but high velocity bat rope to miraculously save himself by pulling a die-hard fire hose, leap off the roof, and crash through a mid-level glass window of the building stunt times 1 friggin' million. This is quite similar to the tactic that Catwoman used to save herself in a very similar problem in her Volume 1, and if you've seen my review on that, you already know how I feel about these physics. Alas, Owlman has caught up with him, and this time says the Court of the Owls are who saved his life from nothing, going on to have plans for his reintroduction to Gotham as the lost Wayne son, all due to Bruce being gone / missing / training. But when he did return, the Lincoln March title was created with a new angle, but the might be, might not be Thomas here had other ideas. During this sequence, Owlman has also rigged the building with many explosives, and right as he's detonated them, Batman decides he doesn't want to die, so he crushes his foe's eyes and gets the hell out of there seconds before the entire thing comes down. A few nights later in Wayne Manor, Bruce is telling Commish Gordon that no body was found in the building wreckage, and then he's joined by Nightwing, wherein he's told the Court of the Owls is truly a large group that is far from done, and for now the captured Talons are in a prison under Blackgate Penitentiary. But let's get into the more real important shit here. Bruce tells Dick that he did in fact have a baby brother when he was 3 years old named Thomas, and this sibling did in fact go through a car crash before being born and possibly made it to Willowwood for treatment, since original paper records state an unnamed baby got admitted 1 week after the accident. Except after all that, Bruce also brings up the real possibility that the Court of the Owls set up those records to manipulate Lincoln into falsely believing that he was a Wayne. This was a great way to put a pin in this story and massive revelation to the final Court of Owls boss in this first feud. The choice is left up to the reader whether you think he's Thomas or not. Bruce then stands with Grayson at his side, and I loved this last interaction between them, gave such a great nod to the original dynamic duo, but more importantly, the two look over at Gotham answering the very first question asked in this opening story arc, and no matter what else there is to come, Batman will always be ready. He'll always be watching. Okay, getting back into it. There was also a pretty sizable epilogue piece included here, and it features a flashback involving Jarvis Pennyworth, father to Alfred, writing a letter to his son saying the Wayne Mansion is cursed and to never go there. Cricket noise. Jarvis was created by Don Cameron in Batman number 16, May 1943, but anywho, the story here is told in two parts, all while we read Jarvis's last words to Alfred, and they consist of regrets for missing his son's life and again to not fulfill his future duty of becoming the Wayne's butler. Oh, he became much more than that, let me tell ya. Bruce is 3 years old here, and with his current age being late 20s, that would put us somewhere in the mid-1980s for this, and during the time, the Waynes, especially a pregnant Martha, were in vicious contention with the unnamed Gotham mayor over the city's current direction. And this unfortunately brought them to odds with the Court of Owls eventually, first seen when Miss Wayne gets a threatening call, followed by Jarvis, who has Alfred's life called into danger right as an owl goes kamikaze on a Wayne Manor window. I guess that makes a point. Things came to a tragic conclusion when Jarvis, Martha, and Bruce were targeted in a vehicular attack, causing the car accident that apparently took Thomas Jr.'s life, eerily taking place on the corner of Lincoln and March Streets. This loss then sent the Waynes away for a summer of grieving, which would be the final time they saw Jarvis, since the Court of Owls used this time of him being alone to strike. One rainy night, the Talon was sent for Mr. Pennyworth, going on to stalk and chase him down like prey, until trapping him in the servants' quarters, and after wounding Jarvis, burns it down with him still inside, also setting his final letter to his son into flames. Back in the present day, Alfred visits his dad's grave, which is beside Thomas Jr.'s on the Wayne Manor Cemetery, and like I said earlier, these endings are great. There's lots of implications and half-clues regarding who Lincoln March was, but not a 100% bona fide answer is given. For now, it's up to you to decide. Issue number 12 is a bit different. To begin with, most of the art is by Becky Cloonan, giving her the title of First Lady to draw a Batman comic, with additional stuff by Andy Clark and Sandu Florea. The story pertains to Gotham teens Harper Row, who, had to casually bring Batman back to life with minor knowledge of electrical engineering in Volume 1, and her quite stereotypical gay brother, Cullen. Harper has, for some reason, been invited to the Wayne Gala event in issue number 1, where she shows up just to nick some food and have a brief chat with Alfred about how so many people like her and Cullen struggle in a part of Gotham called the Narrows. She returns home to a beaten Cullen, courtesy of local hood bullies targeting him for being homosexual, and because they also cut his hair, Harper does the same to hers. What a great sister. She showcases this even further when the Hoods try to jump her and Cullen in an alleyway, but because she's studying to be an electrical engineer, a homemade taser fends off the attackers until Batman swoops in to save them. This begins an obsessive fascination over Batman for Harper, and she goes on to spend weeks learning that her city's protector somehow never gets caught on camera, which is because he's installed special power units everywhere under Gotham's electric grid that controls all electrical units but also helps juice up the strained areas on energy. You can't miss them since they got the Bat logo and everything. Harper then decides to enter the sewer one night, and while looking for Batman, mentions Dad is a convict with zero mentions of a mom. But anyway, she does find her new hero right in the middle of fighting some Vegas sideshow reject called Tiger Shark on a moving boat, which nearly kills her, and naturally this villain would have a tiger, so he gets it to sick Batman, thus allowing Harper her chance to help. Taken when she opens a side water valve, letting a hard burst of runoff sewage to strike the boat, knocking out Tiger Shark and his pet. Batman then doesn't even have to explain that he already had a plan in place with cops waiting nearby and that he never wants to see Harper again, explaining his not-so-joyous response to seeing her in issue number 7. But she cares not, going home to tell Cullen about her first technical team-up with Batman. Batman Annual Number 1 was the final piece included in the Night of the Owls crossover, and this volume with it mainly being a New 52 origin tale for Victor Freeze, more commonly known as Mr. Freeze. He debuted in Batman number 121, February 1959 by Dave Wood, Sheldon Moldoff, and Bob Kane, but was originally called Mr. Zero, short for Sub-Zero, I presume. It wouldn't be until the 1960s Batman TV series where Mr. Freeze would truly emerge with that title, and since then he's the number one ice villain in DC. Sorry Captain Cold, I like you too though. Why was Freeze given this reworked background out of all the Bat Family rogues? I don't know, and I don't care. Over 30 years ago is when part of the story takes place, with Victor as a child and his mother on their way across a frozen pond to decorate snowmen. I also looked up why his mother would use an apple for the decorating, and got no answers. The more important moment here is when she falls through some ice into the frigid water, which, oh boy, began a lifelong obsession with frozen bodies for Victor. This is shown even further when in a later year, because Miss Freeze ended up surviving her first cold plunge, but not the second one, when she is pushed into the icy lake again by her own son so he can watch her literally become Mrs. Freeze. Wow, 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 wow. Another part of this annual happens 6 years ago, with a recently returned from his years of training Bruce Wayne being introduced to a normal-looking Dr. Freeze by Lucius Fox because he currently works at Wayne Enterprises' cryonics lab. However, his new big boss is not keen on what's going on in this wing, and for good reason, because Victor is only there for his obsessive study of a cryogenically frozen person named Nora. His next plan is to try and resuscitate her, but Bruce catches him in the act, thus shutting down the whole project, prompting an attack on him from Freeze, only for him to burst multiple liquid nitrogen barrels and get caught in their radius, giving us yet another science lab accident backstory. By all accounts, this should have killed Victor, but he's seen after this waking up in his new form and having a massive grudge for Bruce Wayne. Cutting to current time, it is still the Night of the Owls, or if we're splitting hairs, just after midnight, meaning that night is technically over. But anyway, Mr. Freeze is back in Arkham Asylum thanks to being nabbed by Red Hood and the Outlaws in that Night of the Owls tie-in issue, which begs the question, why would in the middle of this insane night there be the need for a near midnight psychoanalysis for him? Quite strange. He takes full advantage, obviously, going on to kill the Doctor and then cause a power flux in his cell, rapidly chilling it so he can also weaponize the cooling pipes against the guards. And then in the next scene, Dr. Jeremiah Arkham is seen spick and span, even though he got basically kidnapped by Batman in the Detective Comics Night of the Owls issue when the place got assaulted by Talons, resulting in a mass breakout. What in the hell is going on? Whatever. Freeze escapes after slurping up some of the ice liquid and spewing it out as breath, Superman style. Then he collects his gear and heads straight to Penguin's Iceberg Casino. How did he get a truck to it considering it floats in Gotham Bay? Don't ask me. Oswald then appears, and with this interaction going down at 12:45, it lines up with Mr. Cobblepot not having his Talon Catwoman interaction yet. The two villains then get a deal worked out, with Penguin getting Freeze his weapon so he can go on to kill some of Cobblepot's guys for staged robbery purposes. Man goes through flunkies like no one else. Damn. Victor's second visit is to the Wayne Tower Cryonics lab looking for Nora, but all he finds is Nightwing and Robin waiting to stop him. Also, Grayson took some major damage in his Night of the Owl crossover, except has no sign of any injury here. Both boys don't appear to be much challenge to Victor though, nearly succumbing to his powers, which then garners an invite to the upper levels by Bruce Wayne. And there's nothing totally coincidental about Batman smashing in instead, according to Mr. Freeze, because they go on to have a big fight with Batman prepared this time having heat gadgets. He also went through major shit in his event, but looks totally fine here. Now, this is when things got really weird too. Just as Mr. Freeze thinks he's halted Batman and is looking at frozen Nora, our titular hero reveals that she's just some girl born in the 1920s with the last name Fields, not his wife, who he claims to be in love with. Yeah, that gets a huge yikes. The fight then concludes with Mr. Freeze getting hit with a special thermal device, bringing all of this to a close. Alright, well, there it is. Along with all of the Bat Family tie-ins, the Court of Owls plot is done. The massive showdown at Wayne Manor and then the Batcave was phenomenal, and the twist reveal surrounded by mystery at the end was really wild actually. A good spin on the classic dark reflection of the protagonist challenging them wit for wit. And it did that while continuing to keep Gotham as one of the most fascinatingly fiendish locations in all of the DC universe. The dialogue for this one is interesting. The Jarvis story and intro to Harper Row were fine, totally worth the extra pages on both, but for the Night of the Owl stuff, if you wanted to speed read it, you could in like 40 minutes, maybe less. The only parts with heavy talking is Batman and Owlman's fight, which had some sad and disturbing context throughout, and then there was the last chat with Bruce and Dick, which really gave the cherry on top. It left the door open for a lot more and had you realizing Scott Snyder was far from a one or two trick writer. Lastly, there was a good mix of art here. I don't have anything to gripe on regarding the additional work provided, so I'll focus on the main story stuff. Greg Capullo draws a sharp Bruce Wayne, even with scruff, which is seen a lot over this run. Each Talon got a different design, but still matched their ornate style, and the last page with the Eye of Batman looking over Gotham, one of my favorite pieces from this series so far. Alright, that will do it all for today, and if you have watched until the end here, I want to personally thank you for that, and to please like, share, and subscribe. Please follow me on all my social media platforms, and to please join me next time for Batman: The Dark Knight Volume 1.